My guest today played with many legends. Les Paul, Steve Gadd, Chick Corea, Jaco Pastorius, Paco de Lucia, Phil Collins, you named him, but he is actually a legend himself. Known for his explosive technicality and soul-stirring compositions. He has spent decades not just playing the guitar, but also redefining it. He has influenced many generations of players and continues to resonate across genres. Welcome to this episode, Al de Meola.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for the invitation.
How are you doing, Al?
I'm doing a lot better. In fact, I was doing good right up until that one little incident last year.
Yeah.
I had a heart attack on stage, which was something that I would have never expected ever, because I live healthy. I've never smoked a cigarette in my life. I've never abused any kind of drug at all. But it was, I found out it was a genetic predisposition because my parents had some heart issues way later in life. And it was not a big deal, except what made it interesting for press-wise was that it happened in the middle of a show. Actually, it was near the end of the show, thank God. And it was in the middle of a song. And that's, I think kind of unusual when you hear stories about people have gone through such a thing. Usually it's, at a hotel room or at home or, somewhere else other than the stage or in the middle of a song,
Maybe you're lucky because of that as well, right? If you're home alone or something, or in a hotel.
Alone, you hear about that Home Alone. Or it could have been, well, the next day we were flying. So if I was due to fly home, which if it happened over the ocean, it would have been the end of my life, So luckily it happened, and it was in Romania, and we were lucky to get the top guy to do what he had to do. It was not open heart; it was more stents, and which is not a big deal. When you think about it, it's routine for them, and it's not highly invasive. Like there's no cutting or anything like that. It was pain when I was having a heart attack, and then once you get to the hospital, they give you a nitroglycerin under the tongue, kills the pain, and then they put you in the operating room to deliver through the channel that you have, either through your hand or through your groin, to go up. And there's no nerves inside, so you feel no pain. And then they connect inside the arteries to widen it, and you're good to go.
But when it happened, like afterwards, because you said, "Okay, I live healthy," were you surprised or also?
I was disappointed.
Disappointed.
Yeah. When I'll never forget. I felt the pain, and it was like extreme. I said. And I was laying down. I made it off the stage, and I laid down the back of the curtain.
Yeah,
and it was getting intense, like a super heavy weight in the middle of my chest. Okay, so I said this could be bad, but I wasn't sure. Then when the ambulance came, they were doing their tests in the ambulance.
Yeah,
and that's when the person doing the test revealed to me right to my face, and he said, "Sir, you're having a heart attack." And I was, oh, damn.
Why me?
I was disappointed. I wasn't scared. I was just, damn. I did everything right, and I'm having a heart attack. I know friends of mine that are like way overweight, and they chain smoke, and they're fine.
Did you also at one point go like, okay, that's life, that you have control up to a certain point, but life also happens, right? Like,
yeah, life happens, right? And so I said, okay, here's a brand new experience, so I'm going to do whatever I have to do. And I said, I remember I kept repeating, guys, just do whatever you have to do to keep me alive. Don't let me die. Just don't let me die. I have a little girl. I want to see her grow up. Don't let me die. And they really did get the best guy. They must have summoned him by phone or whatever, and I said, "You got to come in now. This is important." And he did everything perfectly right, according to my American cardiologist.
So how was it stepping on stage for the first time again after that experience?
No big deal.
Okay.
I'm perfectly fine, and there's no restrictions really. In fact, 1 month before the heart attack, I was in our home, and we have a place in Capri, and the house is way up high, 5,000 feet. So, and down below is the sea.
I saw pictures.
Stairs that go all the way. I mean, and hardly anybody could do this. And so I was doing that 1 month before the heart attack every day. And I thought, well, maybe that was, so my cardiologist said, no, that's what made it stronger. And you actually developed an automatic bypass, which made your heart way stronger, something to that effect. And so I asked him, I said, well, now that I've had the heart attack and I'm going back this summer again, which was last summer, can I use the stairs again? He goes, absolutely. Do it every day. Strengthen.
Yeah.
He goes, so I have no restriction in terms of exercise and things like that.
That's a good exercise, man, these stairs.
I climb all the stairs back up to the ninth floor again.
And then you eat some buffalo mozzarella. So with your
the buffalo
daughter,
mozzarella, we have an article that came out that has now reversed their thoughts on cheese.
Oh, yeah?
Cheese is extremely healthy and good for you.
Okay.
In every aspect. You got to read this thing.
Okay.
As long as it's not super processed. But it's the benefits of mozzarella are, I want to try to find the article. It's unbelievable.
Okay.
And people will not believe it when they read it. But this is all scientific.
And it's tasty. So
yeah, well, we used to think, loaded with fat, and that's not a good thing. And I used to also think, because prior to the heart attack, I had 2 days of eating steak in a row. And I never eat steak 2 days in a row. But I thought, okay, well, maybe that's the reason. Now, my cardiologist says, oh, no. Steak is actually very good for you.
Really?
I said, what? He says, no.
People who are listening, I don't, I don't know.
Yeah, he said the protein in steak is so important for you, and that had nothing at all to do with your heart attack. How do you like that?
Well, if you say it's genetic, it's also matter of
genetic.
bad luck, right?
There's no way around it. Genetic, you have, according to, what they have written about it, or what I've been told, is 80% chance that you will have some kind of issue with the heart if it is a situation where both parents have had. It runs in the family, let's say. So.
About your family, I'd like to talk about you, young Al. First picking up the guitar.
Yeah.
Because you were about 8 years old, right? When you had your first
like
lesson?
8 or 9. I just don't remember when. The first time I picked one up was at a party or a get-together my sister was having with friends at our home. My parents were not home, so she invited all these kids to come over. So... And she's 7 years older than I am. So that would have made her probably at that time 15 or 16. And, a couple of the boys brought over, I remember a couple of Fender amps and a couple of Strats.
Okay.
And then, people were dispersing to all different parts of the house and backyard and everything. And so there was a moment when they were just lying on the ground, and I just... picked one up, and I remember I was with my left hand using my thumb on the sixth string. Playing "You Really Got Me."
Okay.
Boo 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 boo. Open E, F sharp. Oh, do 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 do. Do 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 do. All up the A, back to do 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 do. So.
I see you smile when you think of this.
Yeah, I smile about it because it was the very first thing that I played. And now one of the kinks because it was a Kinks song.
Yeah.
Who lives near me in Englewood, the next town
really?
over, like a couple of towns over. He moved there. He probably met a girl from the States. So it's funny. And
but even that simple, it's for a young kid quite an accomplishment to instantly know, like, okay, do 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 do. Like,
yeah,
you got it straight away.
I never thought of it in terms of that, but that led to
because the first time I picked up a guitar was like it sounded horrible.
Right.
But did you instantly have the feeling like, okay,
well,
this feels good?
I knew it was really love at first touch.
Yeah.
Right. So it was like, oh my God, this is a moment that's going to transform my life, because the fascination with electric guitar back then was amazing, because it was new. It was still in the new phase, even though it emerged in the 50s.
Yeah.
But all the music that was coming out, I mean, if you think 9 years, I'm 54, so the beginning of the 60s, through all of the 60s was the most explosive period of music. The revolution of music and rock and pop came out of there from Britain, LA, and San Francisco in particular. It was mind-blowing. Still to this day, it's like, you think of all of the great acts from the Beatles on down, Stones, Moody Blues, Who, and that just, and you can go on and on and on and on and on and on.
But did picking up the guitar give you the feeling I can be part of this?
Yeah, I was very much into the modern pop music of the day, rock music of the day. I got introduced to music of Cream and Jimi Hendrix, and then I had a little group. We were playing the Ventures, which was all the instrumental, like guitar, electric guitar music. So we had little bands that we were doing that, and we were doing some Stones, and some a little bit later some Traffic, and so. You know what? It was great music then. It's great music now. And I'm a big Beatles fan right now. What made me move in a more, let's say, progressive or more complex direction was my need to explore more, to learn more, to do more, because I was finding the solo direction of my favorite band, the Beatles, not so interesting. So I started to lose interest in what they were doing, and I was looking for the next thing. And eventually came upon Miles Davis' Bitches Brew, and then absorbed all the jazz stuff, which I already had my early training in jazz, because when I started taking lessons at 9 years old, it was from a jazz guitarist, old school.
Bob
Aslanian.
Yeah.
Bob Aslanian had he had that big box jazz guitar, and his idols were Johnny Smith and Barney Kessel and Howard Roberts.
Okay.
He'd always mention them. So he would write out these standards, Shadow of Your Smile, and all those kind of standards, and different chord voicings and scales. So I learned how to play that type of music. And at the same time, he would write out the chord changes to Michelle and Yesterday and things like that. And so I had, I was learning the best of both worlds, and learning scales, and learning how to read in different positions on the guitar. But because I was versed in scalular playing, I didn't fit into any rock type of situation, because the rock guitarists were never using the pinky, ever. The pinky on the left hand is never used with most of those rock guys, because they play in a pentatonic type of style. And I couldn't emulate that. I didn't, even though I liked hearing it, I was coming from, the lessons of jazz.
So at one point you must have thought, I want to go to Berklee.
Yeah.
Can you tell me something about that phase in your life? Like,
it was great. It was great. It was. I definitely wanted to keep learning. Look, I'm at the age I am now, and I want to keep learning. I really would love to, but I don't have that that opportunity to really take a big chunk of time. And that's the beauty of when you are starting out and you are basically living with your parents and you have no obligations to a massive amount of bills and family and stuff like that. You could fully devote yourself. And back then, really fully devote yourself, because there was no such thing as a cell phone or a computer, and which is the big problem today, bigger than we can ever imagine. Is the cell phone and the computer is completely necessary in certain aspects, especially of business, or just information. But there's just so many things you could do on these contraptions that can take your attention away.
Even Matteo Mancuso, we talked about this, and he said it's a challenge. And he obviously is a big talent, right? And he has focus, he finds focus, but I can imagine it
breaks up the focus. It's when we made those early records, all the musicians would be totally focused. No one checking their phone. Okay. We would tell the receptionist in the hallway to do not let the phone ring in the control room. Just take messages. So we will all focus. We go in, we do a take, we come in the control room to listen and study and go, yeah, we can get this better. We talk about it and everything. No one is taking a moment to check their phone and, like diverting the attention. So what's been happening is more and more our attention's going to so many different things that we set up in a network situation where you got people can contact you any moment. And God forbid, someone's got to wait for an answer, and there's so many places you have to look to see if you have a message.
But back then you were in this hyper focus. Right?
Yeah, that's why those early records sound great, and it's harder to make a record now, much, and the incentive is so much less because there's no stores anymore. In the United States, there's not one store. It's gone. So nobody's buying records like they used to.
In a way, it's two-way, right? Because nowadays, if you have a computer and you can do a drum loop and you can record it like anybody basically can record, but it's at the same time more difficult.
There's some advantages and a lot of equal, if not more, disadvantages too. The era is stranger and not better.
So when you were in that hyper focus and have that goal, okay, I want to go to Berklee and have a career in music. What kind of support did your family give?
Well, they saw that I was unswayable. They weren't going to be able to convince me to go take up a trade just in case it doesn't work out.
Was there any other alternative of what you wanted to be? Or
no, I had tunnel vision that I don't know how the hell I had it so strong. Like what made me so... it's not like I wasn't insecure. Of course I was insecure. I was like, I wasn't cocky and very self-determined. I was determined, but I was, there was something that happened to me that pushed me over the edge.
You say, I don't know, but what are
I
the
know
answers?
What the edge was. And the edge was I got rejected from a band. I was in this band. These were my friends. I was with them every day from when I was a little boy. And we had this band, and they kind of introduced me to all of the hip new records. And we used to go into New York to all the hip shows and everything. And I don't know, the guy that had the garage is at his house. cool garage for rehearsing. He said, "Oh, we're going to break up the band." I'm breaking up the band. I said, "Oh man, why?" He says, "No, I forget the reason why." So they reformed the band like within days with somebody else. So I took it bad.
Of course. Yeah.
And I channeled all of that hurt. And it was really hurt at first. And then it turns to an anger that really turns into determination to get better and actually show them. So I said, I'm going to take this summer and I'm going to study and practice and I'm going to show them. That was the kick in the pants was the best thing that ever happened, because I really had the strong desire to grow fast. So my father, who was a builder, saw that, I at first was upset. And so he built this beautiful music room on top of the house with a separate entrance for my other friends. So then I would have jam sessions up there and groups up there and everything. And he did that out of love, and out of, he saw what I was going through. And it was only 2 years later, I'm playing with Chick Corea.
Wow, 2 years?
Yeah, 19.
But that says something about you, because disappointment like that can go different ways, right? You can really go like destructive. Or
I was so down that it resulted in my father feeling so bad for me that he said, okay. Well, first of all, he wanted to go down the block and just beat the crap out of this one guy in particular. Instead, he said, "I'm going to build you a music room." And let me tell you something, it was phenomenal.
He canalized his anger then also.
So he channeled his anger and that brought me back up.
Yeah.
And this actually happened.
Do you still have that feeling within you, like okay, I have to prove myself, because you know what I mean? Like,
well, yeah,
because of that experience.
I do, and I'm struggling with it a little bit because every day I turn on my phone, there's another Mancuso out there. He's not the only one, and then there's another one, and there's another one, and then there's like, then sometimes you see these Chinese kids at 4 years old, and they're what? Holy Jesus, or they're drumming, and they're like, oh my God, and there is a new generation of killer players with no music.
Yeah,
they could play, but there's no composition.
Yeah.
So no one's really talking about it, but I'm talking about it. What is the difference? The difference is, great, what are you going to do with that great technical ability? Where are you going to place it? How is it going to fit in music? Do you have music? Is there a composition? So the answer usually is no, it's a groove. Mm-hmm. It's something inconsequential. What's phenomenal is the playing. So they haven't yet matured to the point of, incorporating it into what should be at some point original composition.
Is that,
you can always use somebody else's composition, but
yeah.
I started out at 21 writing for my own record because I was in, at 19, a composition band, also known for their technique, but it was a composition band. We weren't just up there showing off our stuff. We were playing cool pieces.
But your last album, 24, is also, you stated this is composition-wise my best album, right?
It's even more so a composition album because of COVID. We didn't have the availability to fly people around and get together in studios. That was out of the question. So this became a record that I pretty much made on my own, all the parts, and became more of a composition record than the earlier records that incorporated a whole band in one room playing at the same time. You know,
in what way does your experience resonate in that album, you think, as a composer? Because you say, okay, nowadays there's so many kids that, wow, technically super advanced.
Those kids can't play anything from my record if they tried.
Yeah. But
I'm sure of it.
But
they can't.
But does it require your experience, your years to accomplish that? Yeah.
It requires, like, that record only could have happened because I had all the records before it. So it was an evolution, and quite a big evolutionary jump in musical depth and also in composing skill, I would say, of my own doing, because I credit a lot of it because I had that extra time, because it was COVID time, and we didn't have anywhere to go. There was no packing of bags, going to airports, interviews. It was just free time, almost like you're totally retired, and I could totally focus. And the thing that started me off composing for the record was my anxiety with the news and how the devastating statistics of what COVID was doing to the world, and in particular the United States, was shocking, and it was getting scary. So I was becoming consumed with the television and eating, you know, nervous eating, you know. So I said, okay, the only way to get away from any kind of it could be something tragic like that, or it could be divorce, or it could be something missing someone, or whatever the most painful thing in your life. If you want to block that out, read or write music. It's so hard to do both. So I started to do that as a form of therapy. So that started out like that, and it just started to grow, like unbelievable growth. And it took over a 4-year period, mainly because the record company had no rush for it. He said, take your time. We're not in a hurry. So I said, okay, wow, okay. It was never like that in the past. You would always have a deadline. So I had a lot of extra time. In fact, I spent a lot of my own money to make this record. It turned out to be a record, an art record, you know, something, that would have never happened had it been a normal course of action, you know.
There's also a song for your daughter on there, right?
Yeah, now she inspired that one song by coming down and attempting to say goodnight, but also doing her own little ballerina dance at 5 years old. And after seeing the Nutcracker Suite, and she was so enamored with the ballerinas and the music. So I just was watching her. I turned away from my writing board because I was working on a piece. I just turned away. I was watching her, and I just started to play this ostinato figure, arpeggiated ostinato in 5/4, and I was just singing against it, you know, like a little nursery rhyme, da 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 dee da da, you know, and I put words to it. I was making up the words as I was going along, and I said to myself after a while, wait a minute, this could turn out to be something cool. So I wrote out the main chord sequence and the main A section melody, and then developed it and redeveloped it, and further, another step, another section. And then when I was finished with it, I was like, wow, this is really cool. And then my co-producer friend, he said, now what you got to do, you got to put a real orchestra on. I said, oh my God. Okay, a real orchestra. Where am I going to go for this? So my conductor, a friend of mine, he put together an orchestra in Milan. So I flew over to Italy, and we added orchestra to 3 pieces.
That's beautiful, man.
And I think it's...
what would young Al say if he heard that album? 19-year-old Al.
Oh, 19-year-old? I don't know, because it's over 30 records that I have in my career. So I have what one might call a legacy of records, a legacy of, it's 50 years. And it's more like 34, 35 solo records. And I think at the time in the beginning, I was really into the electric and the loud, fast fusion thing. And I think those early records, I almost didn't forget about them, but I just had not heard them in a long time. So after the heart attack, I listened to them and I was like, wow, these are exciting. Now I get it. Now I get why they were popular. I don't think my new record's going to be popular, but it wasn't meant for that. I didn't care about that. I wanted to make a record that shows where I've grown and where I'm at. But now I get what put me on the map. I get it. I get when I hear those early records, and I think we should, for the fun of it, just to feel young again. Let's do this. See if we can do this again.
It's feel good to have that legacy of albums, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
there's so many records. And I think so many of the records in the mid-period, let's say after the 6th record and the 28th record, the diehard fans bought them, but the fans that loved that early sound, we may have lost a few along the way because they wanted more of the same. And I wasn't going to make 28 or 30 records with a same kind of sound. It's just my artistic nature and brought me to different places, a little bit Brazilian, one with vocals, one with influenced by tango, and then I did the guitar trio thing, of course, which was, I can't complain about that. That's sold 7 million records.
Yeah.
So that was really big, and we got a gold record from Holland for that.
Hey, one thing I sometimes do, there's a question from one guitar player to the other in the show. So previous guest is Harry Valentino. He plays in a band called High Fade, Scottish band, up and coming. So he told me, Aldi Meola is my favorite guitar player. So I was like, you want to ask him a question? So he gave me a whole bunch of questions. So I'd like to ask you on his behalf some of his questions. Of course, Friday night, live in San Francisco. How did that feel, playing with what people regard as the 3 guitar heroes of that time?
Well, it was, I was still kind of a baby in a way. I was still the youngest guy, and they were already established far longer than I was. And I knew I was going into some heavy hitter, some quite powerful competition. And, but prior to the guitar trio, Paco and I recorded Mediterranean Sundance 3 years before, and it was a big hit. It was a hit single in a lot of countries, Spain, France, Italy, Germany. So I already had, in my way, I kind of discovered Paco for the North American audience. So adding John, when this impresario from London named Barry Marshall, who's McCartney's guy now, and this is the biggest, he started with us. Mm-hmm. It was his idea to put John with us, and I said, well, if you do that, this thing's going to be phenomenal. If we have John and Paco and myself, oh my God. And it was. And what he did was Barry Marshall planned a 2-month tour starting in Scandinavia with almost no days off. We played almost every night, going all the way down to Southern Europe and then over to the States. And we finished in San Francisco. And remember, it was at a time when no cell phones and no computers. So all we did all day, once we got to that hotel, we were practicing for that night with no interruptions. And I think that's what made that last record, even though we recorded almost every show with a truck. I have all the tapes. All the tapes.
Because another question of his was, were there any more takes of Race with the Devil on the Spanish Highway?
Yeah, well, not with the guitar trio, but there's a million of them with Race with the Devil. But that's with electric.
Yeah.
But with the guitar trio, it was all acoustic, and it was the last 2 shows that we were on fire. Our chops were at the best. I mean, even in that age category, your chops are going to be at the best, But we played every night, and we played with such inspiration. We were playing for one another. This is what he should know and the audience should know, is that when we played the show, we weren't playing so much to the audience as we were playing to each other. So I wanted to show Paco and John, okay, my solo, and then I could see they're like, okay, now I got to top it. So then the next guy would try to do something that's going to be spectacular. And I'm like, holy God. And then John would be the same, and it would go round and round and round. And we would play better than normal because we were stretching.
It's interesting how that can happen in arts and music, that if combined forces, that they will push you to become better.
Yes.
Lennon McCartney is maybe a good example of that as well, right?
Total. Lennon, Lennon was writing such great stuff in the beginning all the way through. And, Paul is the first to say, like, for instance, when he wrote Strawberry Fields, it was like so great a song, because it really is. And Paul said, oh my God, when I heard that, I knew I had to go run home and write something equally as phenomenal. So he came back with Penny Lane. Great song.
Yeah.
Just super great. Yeah. So when you have that, and the smart thing that kept them together and in harmony without too much fighting was the fact that it was a Lennon-McCartney track, even though it was written by one guy. So you can always feel like you're part of the track. You own half the track no matter what. So that was a lucky thing for the Beatles, or else the Beatles could have ended maybe in 1966 instead of 70. But with the guitar trio, it was it started out as fun competition, a very creative competition in a way. We didn't look at it as competing, but we were inspiring one another to play better. But it really was a healthy competition. And then it got to be a little bit, different. It's 3 leaders that don't want to compromise so much. And I came into that last record with 3 very long charts, longer than this table. But Paco didn't read. And I wasn't thinking of that. I was just thinking, I got to contribute. My job is to do 3 songs, and each guy 3 songs. And I have the time to write. So I always write it out. So even if we have to record it in sections because Paco doesn't read, and unfortunately, we did it that way in the studio, but how are you going to do it live? So when we went out to tour the record, we only did 1 song from the record, one of mine. because all the other songs, everything was so complicated. But that's what made Friday Night in San Francisco so popular. It was mostly improvisation.
Yeah. There's two more questions I'd like to ask on before we wrap this up. Another question is, why were you inspired by Cassiopeia on I Can Tell on Splendido Hotel?
Cassiopeia?
Yeah, you know that is a Japanese band. So probably...
did they do that?
No, but were you inspired by them?
No.
Okay, short answer. And then the last question he had was also his wife seems super cool, and the story of how they met and how she has helped him is awesome.
Who's this?
The same guy asking you the question. What does it mean that she's such a genuine supporter and believer in your work?
Who's this? My wife?
Yeah.
What does it mean?
Yeah.
Well, she's an extraordinary woman. I mean, I probably wouldn't be alive without her, because she's very involved. There's no stress in this type of relationship. It's a lot of joy, So it's a 10-year marriage so far, and it's been the best 10 years of my life. So we do things together like these home events.
Yeah.
Which we created something that is highly unique and not been copied by anybody, much to our surprise.
Because you open up your home for fans, basically,
we open up the home.
Yeah.
It's not cheap, but the experience is worth 10 times the amount, because you would remember a very important. It's a memory that will sit with you, and you'll be glad you did it. It's like...
but how's that for you? Because you open up people very close to your personal life.
Great.
Right?
It's great because, I love to cook. So I cook the first meal, and they watch me, and they are asking questions at the same time. And my house is like a museum, and so they get to see, a lot of things that they would have questions about, or things that might remind them of, something from a record or a concert, or, they get to really see my life, and I thought of, well, how would that be if Paul McCartney offered that and I could afford it? Let's say I could afford it. And if I could afford it, shit, I'm going to do it. I go to Paul McCartney's house, let him cook for me and ask him a question, sit down, have dinner with him. And then after that, he'd play for me. It's a very special thing.
So, Paul, if you're listening,
it's not for
Al
anyone,
wants to come over.
But it's for people that want to, in this life, we only have a limited amount of time on the earth, right? So let's do some things that are, or go some places that are, you've always wanted to go, or study a language I've always wanted to study, or whatever, and I think after COVID, that feeling became more prevalent, and to a much larger degree. Like we all could have, we could have got, it would have been the end of our lives had they not found the vaccine, perhaps. Perhaps. So now that we maybe have gotten this chance, we got to live.
That's a nice ending to this conversation. Thanks, Al, so much for your time, Al Di Meola, and also listeners. Thanks for listening.
My pleasure.